All right, Ramblers, let's ramble. This is Dean Antonio, professor of politics, human rights, civil liberties, but also sport and its relationship to government. And one of the things that we've been discussing this year with my students is things related to youth sports and collegiate sports, right? The dark side and the good side. So I thought I would call somebody that I know from the past, an amazing coach, motivational speaker. He's done it all. He's coached at the youth level, he's coached at the developmental level at every age. He's coached men and women. He's coached girls and boys. He's coached collegiately. He's won at high levels. And he's here with us today. His name is Alan Alderson. Alan, how are you today?
Dean, I'm doing great and so glad to join you today.
You're out in BC?
Out in beautiful British Columbia, we got some mixed skies today, probably some rain coming up pretty soon, but might even see a little bit of sunshine.
So, like you've got tons of experience. So, how many years now have you been coaching on and off together? What would you say now, going back to when you were in your
Ooh,
teens, probably?
gosh. Yeah, I don't even want to say the number because it'll show how old I am, but 35
Yeah.
years, something around there.
Well, if you weren't going to say anything, I was just going to say what was on your LinkedIn account. So
Uh-oh, what does it say on my LinkedIn
it
account?
says doesn't it say over so many years of experience? I think.
I think I do over 25 so that
Ah,
people
okay,
go,
there you go.
okay, he's
Yeah,
old, but not that
yeah,
old. And I
yeah,
did start coaching pretty young, so
yeah.
that kind of helped that process. And I got my university coach fired because I didn't think he was doing a very good job. And all of a sudden, I graduated and I was coaching at the university level right away. So that gave me a big head start. And when
So
you're young and foolish, you don't know exactly what you don't know. You just jump into it and go, wow, this is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So,
it's so true, isn't it? When you're
yeah,
young and you're just somebody will just throw you a challenge,
yeah,
right? And I've heard the movie directors talking about this. Their second movies, they're really young and they're just basically doing whatever they want. And they were like, we were too stupid to know that we didn't know anything. We were too dumb. So we just thought
yeah,
let's just do it. But then as you get older, you start thinking, oh, if I take on this challenge, you start looking at what happens if you don't meet the challenge. Will it make me look bad? Am I now going to go down the ladder of the coaching ladder in the coaching world?
oh, certainly seeing a lot of that in the US with the changes to NCAA sports. And all of a sudden, you've got some big time, long term coaches, very famous, suddenly retiring. And
Mm,
that retiring is because they can't stomach the thought of not being on the perch that they're at and suddenly watching their teams not crumble, but
mm.
all of a sudden have more legitimate contenders. And they are no longer going to easily be able to sit at the very top of the pack. They're going to have lots of challengers. And so it's been pretty fascinating to watch from this side of the border.
Yeah, it's nuts, especially so I mean you've been coaching soccer your whole life, right? So we can
Yeah,
focus on that a little bit.
yeah,
For a certain time, there were certain pockets of schools in the United States where soccer was big early on, and
yeah,
nobody else caught on. So you saw
yeah,
people like Anson Dorrance who would just win year after year after
yes,
year,
yeah.
and now all of a sudden there's no domination anymore. Really, is there? Like, is it opened up down there? Because I haven't really followed NCAA in a while.
Yeah. And am I allowed to say, especially on the girls' side, Anson did things extremely well. He's very bright. He brought in the whole he brought in a full package. It
Yeah.
wasn't just soccer, it was, training people to be high performance. And he
Mm-hmm.
got such a head start on people. And then as people slowly came on board, he was cutting edge and he found a way to keep riding that
Right.
edge and stayed at the top for a really long time, which is remarkable. But then other universities got the hunger and they went after it. And so now there's a whole bunch of possibilities there. There's still a couple up at the top, but there's a much wider possibility when it comes to national tournaments. And as we know in the sport of soccer, especially in tournament play. You've got to be good, and you also have to be lucky to end up at that very end. Gone are the days where UNC is going to make it to the final every single year.
Right.
There's too much parity across the board with too many programs going after it and trying to be competitive.
Absolutely. And there's like literally 1,000 programs.
Yeah,
More on the women's side. So there's like 1,000 on the women's side, 750 on the men's side, more
yeah,
because of Title IX, which
yeah,
we could spend an hour on some other day.
yes,
Given the importance then of what you've seen, collegiate sports becoming bigger and bigger, the opportunities, the scholarships are becoming bigger and bigger. Have you seen then at the development level, have you seen this kind of craziness get out of control now where you see parents and kids that are so focused on collegiate sports that
yeah.
they lose track of what's important?
Oh, there's just a craziness and also just unrealistic and if I can use the term, just ignorant of
Mhm.
reality. Again, you mentioned the number of university programs there are, and then you go down a little bit and go, well, how many actual scholarships are there? And there are so many parents who have this idealistic, thought of, oh yeah, my daughter, and I use daughter because there's more women's scholarships than men's.
Yes.
But my daughter's going to get a full ride. It's going to be brilliant and whatever. And the realities are so much different. There are so many Canadian kids who end up in the States on these partial scholarships who are paying just massive amounts of money to go to a university
Yeah.
that isn't what it was marketed as being
Yeah.
to them. So yeah, it's fascinating to watch. It's horrible in many cases, and it's yeah, I guess fascinating is probably the right word for it.
Yeah. I mean, case in point, I mean, God, we've got so many stories, but one in particular, I remember that the parent wanted their kid to go. He wanted to be able to say his kid got a scholarship to the University of Iowa so bad,
Yeah,
and they turned down a full ride at a D2 school,
yeah,
and she would have played every game.
yeah,
Iowa, in 4 years, she started one game.
yeah,
She got hurt in her last year. But here was the thing: the dad was on the hook for half of the tuition.
yeah,
Out of state tuition, foreigners, that's like 50, 60 grand. So if you're paying half that, that's 30 grand a year that you're paying.
yeah.
But it was so important to him that he have the sticker of the University of Iowa on the back of his car.
Mhm.
It was so important to him that and now when you talk to her 10 years later, it's like, yeah, it was more important to dad than it was to me.
Oh, yeah. And you see far too much of that, which is scary. But you also have kids who have the same thing where they get in their mind, I want to go play at this school. And I guess on the fun side, I get to talk with some kids who are suddenly down at this school that they wanted to be at so badly. And then they get the reality of how difficult it is, how competitive it is, and all of a sudden they go from a spot where they were the golden child to, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of golden
Yeah.
children, and I'm no longer one of the
Yeah.
gold ones. And so, yeah,
Every kid is as good as me.
totally. And so I've got a girl that I was working with down at one of the big schools in the States, and all of a sudden, sorry, I'm just going to close my blinds because the sun has come up
I can
in
see it on your
the
face.
valley here. Yes. And so she's suddenly down at one of the, biggest universities in North America, and she'd never been on the bench before. And so I'm on Zoom calls with her and talking about it, and she's trying to wrap her head around this. And then compounded with that is this particular school has a pipeline of kids from one particular area, and there's some politics. In order to keep that pipeline open, she needed to make sure that certain girls were getting playing time and starting because it
Wow.
kept the conveyor belt of good players coming out of that club. And so suddenly this girl is up against politics and some big time politics. And how do you wrap your head around the fact that I'm actually better than that girl and that girl and that girl, but they're playing because they came from that club and that coach controls that pipeline. And so therefore I'm not starting right now because of that, despite the fact that I'm better and My teammates know I'm better.
Right.
So you just get into some really complex and interesting scenarios that kids have to go through. And then you also have parents trying to figure out, okay, how do I help my kid who's now thousands of miles away from home? It is not living up to what it was advertised as. How do we deal with this? So some really interesting, complex, difficult issues that kids and parents and families have to deal with.
They're not, it's like they need some kind of seminar before they even start the process saying, by the way, this is what you're going to be looking at.
Yes.
Even you talked about, superstars on your own team. Excuse me. And it's funny because you as a coach, you see the kids that you coach move on to university, and in your head, you're like, okay, she's going to do great. She may struggle because
Yeah.
she wasn't doing so great. And the surprises that you always get surprises. So I had one player; she was the leading goal scorer in the league, in the highest league that she was playing at.
Yeah.
Failed miserably at
Mm,
the university. Same university, another kid that I had coached who kind of always squeaked through, always 15th, 16th player. This player just blossomed. They just exploded. And it was
yeah.
one of the most important players on the team. Same school, and both players came through the same system.
Yeah.
But imagine the damage that it did to the one kid.
Oof. That is so difficult. But again, this is where we're all wired a little bit differently. And when you step from one culture and one environment and go into a different culture and environment, some people are going to thrive and some people aren't going to thrive. And so when I'm talking with kids and they're looking at programs and whatnot, I'm like, okay, you must have an in-person visit. You need to meet the coaches, the coaching staff. You need to meet the kids. You need to find out which kids are the most influential. What are they like? What is the kind of culture? What gets rewarded? Is it the kind of place that I have a chance to thrive, or is it not? And there's a lot of things that where people sign on too quickly. And again, from a coach's perspective, I shouldn't just go straight across the board. For a lot of coaches, kids are throwaway. If they come in and don't work out, see ya. You're out of here. Didn't work. Oh well, so sad. And next one in, kind of thing. And at bigger schools, they have the opportunity to do that. They can make mistakes and no big deal. See you later, and don't care about the carnage or damage that results with that. And so there's a lot of homework that needs to be, or there's a lot of homework that should be done in advance to make sure that it is the right kind of culture and environment from people. And I even had that as a university coach where I guess some kids are like, no, I play my best when a coach is yelling and screaming and in my face and whatever. And I'm like, well, the bad news is I'm probably not going to do that. And I'm not going to do that because that there
Yeah,
there are
that's not your code.
short-term reasons that can work and that kind of motivation and whatnot, but there's much better fuel that you can be running on. My job is to teach you that better fuel. And so that kind of kid could go to a coach who's yelling and screaming at him and thrive. Another kid who has a different set of ways that they go about their business could completely crumble and not survive in that environment. So that's one of the fascinating things about sports. It's why I know I wanted my kids to be in sports for a certain number of times so that they could go through that competitive cauldron of all the difficult scenarios you come up against and learn and grow from them. Can be amazing, can also be horrible.
Yeah. Well, let's stick with the good before we get to the bad. Some things, so girls that are involved in competitive sports, and again, we're talking competitive,
Yeah,
their grades are higher. They're less likely to smoke, less likely to drink, less likely to get pregnant, more likely to get into a university. The problem, though, is that for a lot of those students, the reason why they're playing a sport is for the extrinsic value, meaning to get into the university, to get the scholarship,
yeah,
and not for the fun of it, right? And not getting the enjoyment out of it.
yeah,
Um, so when you're seeing these kids, they're like, okay, you know what? I'm really good at the sport and I want to get into university. I'm really, really serious about it. The first thing you say as a coach is, okay, you got to buckle down. You got to do this. You got to get good grades and all that. So many of them, if their dream gets crushed and they don't end up going to university, their grades start to fall.
Yeah.
So if you are involved, it can be great.
Yeah.
It can keep your head out of trouble. I was doing an interview with the doctor about vaping and the dangers of vaping. And he was saying, look, I'm a firm believer in sport, right? Sports keeps you away from crap. But the problem is, once you're no longer involved, a lot of times they fall. And I'm sure you've seen
Yeah.
players that just said, oh, I didn't make it this year.
Yeah.
They don't go to the B team. They don't play recreationally. They just quit.
Yeah.
And it has repercussions in other parts of their life, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And on a positive side with that, again, because you want to talk about the good a little bit, is because of the way, and again, I don't know all the rules, but with the transfer portal and the ability for people to go, oh, made a mistake here, I can go somewhere else. At least you have an opportunity now for kids to go, oof, I overshot. I am not at that level. And I'm not at that level from the perspective of I also run the fight to get myself to that level. There is another level of play that I can find in NCAA Division One or two or three or whatever else, or back in Canada, whatever it might be. There are now more alternatives for kids to be able to move when, oops, I'm in the wrong environment. And so that I think is one of the positive things of having more options for kids, because in the past you sign on for a school, you're stuck there, you got to sit out a year, and suddenly, some massive, everything was in favor of the university and the coach. Now it's swung completely the other way. And again, there's good, bad, and ugly related to that, because now you got kids who just jump way too quick. As soon as the second adversity hits, they're out of there. But on the positive side, for kids like you just described, they go, they don't make the team. Now they have an opportunity to go, okay, I overshot, wrong environment, wrong thing. I need to find my next opportunity, and they can keep the dream alive a little bit more.
Yeah, there's other good things, like there's stats with regard to Fortune 500 companies. Their CEOs all played sports, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you learn leadership skills. But then there's the question: is it the environment that taught you the leadership skills, or are you just naturally a leader and you're thriving in that environment, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's hard to really know. But the idea of working within a team, first of all, if you're going to go into the
Yes.
business world, the corporate world, if you're going to go into teaching, if you're going to go into anything, um, it's different, I guess, if you're playing tennis. But if you're playing soccer, football, basketball, and you're part of a team,
Yeah.
there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And there's a lot of good that comes with that. You gain so much confidence
Yeah.
by helping the team and reaching goals. I mean, that is where real confidence comes from, right? Not that phony
Yeah.
confidence where we just tell somebody you're great, even though they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
how
absolutely.
honest are you as a coach? Because you just said that some of these players may leave and go from one university to the next. Maybe they're not being honest. Maybe it's because they didn't work hard enough and they didn't get better. This was an expression you used to use with coach players that said, "Coach, I want more playing time." And remember what you used to say?
Probably
Get
would have
better,
said, get
get
better.
better.
Make me look like an idiot for not playing you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had this one kid who played for me, played 5 years, and a couple years later, I bumped into him, and he's like, "Coach, you ruined my life." And it's like, "Oh, awesome! That's exactly what every university coach wants to hear." And I'm like, "No, what did I do?" And he goes, "Those 5 years were the best years of my life. How is anything ever going to measure up to that again?" And but on the positive side, when I recruited him to the school and to the program that he was in, he struggled. He was not necessarily a university aspirational kid, but he had dreams, and I have to be careful in terms of what I say, but he wanted to get into law enforcement. And so he graduated, had 5 amazing years, uh, had that dip afterwards. Like, how is anything going to measure up? Because when you're a part of a team, and our environment was great. It was an environment where kids got to thrive. And not that I didn't have some bad kids that, or some kids that had bad experiences, but I had so many kids that had amazing experiences. And so now he is absolutely thriving in his law enforcement career. And he has the not the exact same, but a similar a group of guys who are together trying to achieve amazing things together. And he's thriving once again. And I absolutely love that. And part of the reason he was able to do that was because of what he went through during his university years. The adversity that you naturally face when you have big goals and you're going after it and striving and thriving and having a group of guys that you're doing that together with. He's now doing that in his work world. And so I think there's a reason that there's those studies and those statistics is because if you're in a competitive athletic team, uh, there's the natural good things that you get out even in bad programs. But if you're in a really good one, you're going to learn some skills and attributes that make you an amazing teammate wherever you're going to go because you've seen what the conflict that is necessary, the regular accountability that is necessary, working things out with teammates in order for things. There
Conflict
are so many.
resolution,
Oh,
constant conflict resolution, constant.
so much. And unlike a work environment, it's way more in your face, which has some really good things like if
Immediate. There's no meeting. It's immediate. It's on the field. It's
totally,
happening on the sidelines. It's happening as the
totally.
play is going on.
And the human resource people aren't standing beside you saying you can't do that because in sports you get away with it awful lot. And
Yeah.
again, there's good, bad, and
To a
ugly.
yeah, to a certain point.
Yes. But that creates some kids who have gone through some amazing experiences, and when they bring that into whatever realm that they're in, they can be transformational for a culture.
Yeah, they try to replicate it in other
Yeah,
parts of their life, either
yeah,
socially or in business.
totally.
Um, and it's great to see when the experience is good, you see people that go back to that university and keep those friends for the next
Yeah.
10, 15, 20 years because it was so good.
Oh,
I want,
absolutely.
if you can give a truth bomb to people that think they're going to go to university, and there's really three things that you can do in university. So you can concentrate on your social life, which is fun. And if
Yeah,
we're being honest, a lot of people go to university for the social aspect.
yeah,
Then there's the academic aspect,
yeah,
which is important, kind of. I mean, you're at school, you want to get a degree, you want it to
yeah,
count for something. And then,
yeah,
of course, if you're lucky enough to play collegiate sports,
yeah,
there's that. You
yeah.
can't do all three, right?
That is correct. You cannot. I
You can do
told my kids,
two
I
or one and a half.
probably, well, two, if you're incredibly disciplined.
Right.
If you're incredibly disciplined, and you have to have the dream in both realms. Like there has to be something that keeps that academic dream alive, and there has to be something that keeps the athletic dream alive as well. But if you also want to add social life onto that, there's carnage. There just is. And so I always told my guys, it's like, you know what? You're not going to have time if I'm coaching guys or girls. You're not going to have time to have a healthy dating relationship with anybody until your athletic career is over. There just is not the time to succeed in the classroom, succeed on the field, and succeed well in relationships outside. And again, I say that always facetiously at the
Yeah.
beginning because university kids are going to find a way to do
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I candidly did with my guys is I told them I want you in, what's considered full-time coursework, but it's going to take you 5 years to graduate with your 4-year degree. So I want you to do that because I want you to be successful in the classroom. If you're trying to do it all too quick and get out of here in 4 years, it's going to be difficult because we also want to succeed as an athletic or as a
Yeah.
soccer team, we want to win stuff. And in order to win stuff, we're going to be going deep into seasons. You're going to be missing an awful lot of class. You're going to be traveling a lot. It's going to be tough on your academics. And so let's think of this as the 5-year ride. And on that 5-year ride, you want your degree at the end of it, but we want as many chances to win as many trophies as we can. So you've got to be disciplined and dedicated in that way. And you need to keep your grades up in order to do that. And so social life has to, as a distant third. You're going to socialize with your teammates a lot. That's going to be part of the enjoyment. And you're going to build some friendships, meaningful relationships that are going to last a lifetime because of that.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be brutally honest with them.
Yeah.
Can you give us? I know from experience talking to some friends that have gone through the university process. I had one friend, good friend of mine. She went to university there, and she was here, best shape she's ever been in her life, destroying the league, amazing. She goes to university. She comes back. She's totally fit, muscle everywhere. She comes back around November to visit, skinny, no meat on her at all. And they beat them like rented mules. Can you give the people listening an indication as to what a grind And we'll just talk about soccer right now. I mean, football, God, imagine how bad that is, but
Yeah.
just soccer. Can you talk about the grind, what they do to you? How many practices are there? How many games? And just how they like really treat you like chattel, right?
Yeah. And there's probably several different directions we can go with that. Um, there's the two statements. There are coaches who are transactional, and there are coaches that are transformational. And a transformational coach wants to build amazing people who are going to be amazing at their sport. A transactional coach wants a athlete that's going to produce for them. I need you to
And
win.
only them. They
Oh,
don't care if you go on afterwards and be great for somebody else.
they
Do they?
do,
Well,
uh, because it
if it reflects
benefits
on
them.
them, okay,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yeah.
and the tricky part of that is, are all coaches narcissists, or are they able to balance that just a little bit? I had one of my players say to me at the end of his actually no, he was still in his third year. He goes, "Coach, you're kind of Machiavellian." And I'm like, why do you say that? And he goes, because you're pretty clever. You know how to get the very best out of us because it is in your best interest to get the very best out of us. And I said,
He said
well,
that.
when you get to he's a pretty gutsy kid. He's now a lawyer,
Oh,
and
I love it. That's
and
awesome.
and I said, well, I get where you're coming from, but do understand this. When you're looking at the deep motives of a person, you're probably going to see that in terms of their character. And you see me all the time. I would hope that inside me is a person that authentically cares for the guys that I have on my team or the girls that I'm coaching and wants the very best for them. I said, but do understand, my decisions are not ever, I shouldn't say that ever. Can you ever say ever?
Yeah, I can't.
They are not based on what is best for a single individual person. I always have to make the decision in light of what is best for the overall program. That's what we are trying to do. At times, that's going to benefit certain people, but if I make it just about what's best for me as a coach, there are going to be problems. If I make it just what's best for one particular athlete, there's going to be problems. If I can always go to sleep at night because I've done what is in the overall best interest of continuing to move our program forward, then I'm probably in a good place. And so to use that, go back to my example of that girl who's playing at that big D1 school, is she's got a coach who needs to rely on that pipeline. So she is always in service to that one human being, that one guy who gives her the conveyor belt of good talent. So she's got to play politics in order to do that. So when she gets a kid, so now she gets a Canadian kid, part of the national team pool, comes down there who's better than some of those kids from that pipeline. But this lady knows she's not going to get a ton of kids out of Canada. So the other pipeline is more important. Then she's doing things. And again, I guess she could say, I'm doing what is in the overall best interest of my program. It's like, okay, that's fair. But then if a kid talks to me and goes, what about this school? Should I choose that one? It's like, well, understand these are the politics that you're going to face by going to that particular school. And so I guess that's where getting in deep and understanding what the motives of a coach are, what the climate culture is, and those type of things become pretty important.
It's interesting that your example that he became a lawyer, because if there's one profession where they treat the new lawyers like crap,
Yes, yes.
it's there. So I guess he understands the gig, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
Um, Anson Dorrance, I always show this clip when he talks about the difference between coaching males and females. And I always show this video where he talks about the difference. And he talks about the biggest problem with males is hubris. You say to them, you say something to them, and every kid looks around like, yeah, these other guys, they're really crappy, huh? The coach
Oh,
must be
totally.
talking about them.
Yeah.
And then with the females, he's like, it's the total opposite. You can't single them out, even if it's for something good sometimes, because some girls just want to be invisible. They love the sport. It's
Yeah.
their sanctuary, but it's like, don't call me out, even if I'm good. I just want to be invisible. He said you can't show video to the women, but you need to the men, because you need to say, oh, really? You didn't lose the ball 3 times? Look, because
I call
because
that
they're
ego.
delusional. Men are
Ego.
delusional. Males are delusional.
Yes.
right? So the in your experience, the difference between coaching the two sexes, I learned very quickly, like making a lot of mistakes. Would you
Yeah.
agree that you have to treat them differently, equal but differently?
For sure. I call the video sessions with guys, I call that ego busting.
Mm,
Sometimes you need to sit them down and go,
yeah.
okay, you have one vision of the world and what you think it is. Here's the reality. And I've actually done it individually. I've also done it at times corporately, which has a huge, there's ramifications and
Wow.
risks. And but sometimes in order to shake a kid enough for reality to set in, he needs to know this we all recognize what reality is. You do not. So now there's nobody going to back you. And if they do back you because they're afraid to have a confrontation with a friend or whatever, we are all on board with this. And so, and again, I didn't do that very often because there are obviously ramifications of that, but there's a time where that needs to be. With a girl, I did that once. And I actually, funny enough, this happened probably in like 2013 or something like that. About a year and a half ago, I actually texted her and I apologized to her. And I said, you know what? I've been too many times. I've been thinking about this, and I look back at that particular day, that particular moment, and I called you out in front of your entire team, and I said that came out of my frustration because I couldn't figure out a way to get through to you, and I thought that I would do that, and I should not have gone there. I should have continued to be curious, creative, and tried to figure out a way that didn't involve doing it the way that I did it in front of all your teammates. And I want to apologize for that. And she was kind and gracious, and she's like, Coach, she goes, I knew you always did it from a good place and from a heart, and I needed to be called out sometimes. And she goes, I haven't even thought about it. I totally forgive you. Don't worry about it, and whatever else, which was classy of her. But I do look back on that, and I regret that I did that way. Girls and guys, are they different? Absolutely. But I also think that there's just a full spectrum of that. And I think the best coaches try to figure out their individual athletes as quickly as they can to figure out the right way to help them, and then also help them to grow when some of their things are undermining or limit them. And so I think that there's something to be said for being curious about individuals, figuring out what makes them tick, and then working on helping them grow to give them the best chance to be successful moving forward. But I do agree they're different for sure. Other than I will say the very first time I ever coached females was the national team. And so I was in the National Coaching Institute. And so in the National Coaching Institute, it was amazing education. One day, one of my things was I had to do 20 minutes of coaching women's national team with the players that I got to work with. And on the spectrum thing, you could go after those girls and they wanted it. Like they wanted confrontation, they wanted aggressiveness and whatever. So I think there's a spectrum there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was watching the Hope Solo documentary in which she talked about the first time that she was playing in goal because they moved her to goal because she
Yeah,
was so amazing, and she kicked the ball to, I think it was Mia Hamm, from her hands, drop kicked it,
yeah.
and Mia Hamm said, "Don't you effing ever drop kick a ball to me!" Like just blasted her.
Yeah,
But at that level, that's the national team level, right?
yeah.
High school, college. If you're not resilient, you're going to be found out very, very quickly if you can't take
Oh,
that competitive cauldron that you and endurance have been talking about, right?
absolutely. But I will say, my very first year as a professional soccer player, I was playing for the Calgary Strikers. Our coach Tony Towers played for Manchester City, so he came over and
Tony Towers. I remember Tony Towers. That's
he
a long
played for
time ago.
Montreal Manic or whatever it was
Mm-hmm.
as well. And so he was my first professional coach. And for the most part, I came through coaching or I came through as a player, amateur level. I was always one of the best players on my team. So I got lots of encouragement, lots of kudos, and rarely yelled at. And plus I was a pretty nice guy. So not easy to yell at me because I was a good kid. And so all of a sudden I'm playing pro. This guy is used to typical British whatever,
Yeah.
which is you just get the shite beat out of you every single day and whatever else. And so winning the coin toss was when I got to be on the far side of the field away from him for the first half so I could get into my groove or
Mm.
whatever. If I was on his side of the field, it was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just going to get abused for 45 minutes. And it was my first year as a pro player. I was okay, but it was tough slugging. And so and then on my team, Nick Gilbert was our captain. He played for Canada like a dozen times or something like that. So I was talking to Nick because we're out of town, so they had us all living in a hotel. And Nick is like, I love Coach Towers. And I'm like, what? I hate the guy. And he goes, he's my favorite coach I've ever had. And it's like, well, when you're a national team caliber and you're a striker and you score goals and whatever, it must be nice. But when you're the rookie, somebody's getting abused, and it's probably the rookie. Anyways, all that to say, then I was at UVic after that. I wrote a 44-page paper on knowledge of results or feedback. What kind of feedback is most essential in high performance environments? And there's no doubt you need to develop a backbone and resiliency and whatever else. But the research still is heavy sided towards you need to create a type of environment where people know that you believe in them, where they can trust that you have their best interest in mind, and there needs to be a ton of positive stuff because when the positive stuff is there, you know that you're noticed, you're understood, and that someone cares for you. And then when they bite, you take that from someone that you know that loves and cares about you, and that is a completely different scenario than just having a coach bark at you because their livelihood is at stake, and if you don't play good, I might get fired and whatever else, just that different kind of environment. So
Yeah. It's
taking all of
crazy.
that in taking all that into consideration is the more positive you can be, the better it is. And with girls, there's probably the research would slide even more towards more positive stuff. With guys, there needs to be some ego busting in there because way too many guys just have this belief that is skewed from reality, and they need to get beaten up just a little bit to figure that out.
Yeah, many professional coaches were lamenting how the new breed, and this was 20 years ago, not now,
Yeah,
how the new breed you couldn't coach them the same way because they couldn't handle it, right? That the hair
yeah,
blower treatment. But the other
yes.
thing too is a fellow coach once put it this way. He goes, "You can scream at somebody, and maybe it'll work once, twice." He goes, "But after a while, it becomes background noise, and that's what the last
Oh,
thing you want to be as a coach is background noise."
absolutely. I was playing a game for Tony Towers in Toronto, and we were winning 1-0. We were in that hunt for second spot behind the Vancouver 86ers back then, or Whitecaps 86ers, whatever. And so we we're battling for that second spot. We're on a road trip. We used to go back east and play. Who was on that trip? Toronto, Montreal, and who was the third one? Hamilton, I think. Anyways, so we're playing Toronto. We're in the 89th minute or 90th minute, and we're winning 1-0. And I'm playing right midfield that particular day. I do my thing. I'm a rookie. I get it. I cross the ball in. Keeper catches it. Other end, they score in a counterattack, 1-1. We come into the change room, and I should have gone to the corner flag, but I was young enough as a player. And candidly, I didn't watch very much soccer when I was growing up because I lived too far away from Vancouver. I wasn't from a family that knew about soccer. I just loved to play. So I hadn't, and TV was hardly ever on TV back then. And so I didn't have a context. And when I played amateur, we just played right until the end. We tried to score as many goals as we could. There wasn't the whole idea of go to the corner flag, keep it in that end.
You got to get the 3 points.
I didn't know any of that stuff yet. And so I'm just playing away. It's like, oh, I got a chance to cross the ball in, cross it in. Oh, it didn't work out. Oh, counterattack. I go in the change room. He comes like 1 millimeter from my face and he is screaming at me and he spit when he talked. He's got veins bulging everywhere. I can kind of see in my peripheral vision everybody going, I'm glad I'm not Al and whatever. And it felt like 10 minutes, but the entire time, all I had going on in my brain is, you know, he doesn't need to do any of this. All he would need to do is say, next time, go to the corner flag. Lesson learned. Sorry, I didn't even think about that. Didn't know, didn't realize at this level, all that stuff. He didn't need to yell at me for all that time. it didn't make me a better person. I literally, all I heard was I was just talking to myself going, wow, look at the vein bulging. He might have a heart attack right in front. That's literally what I was doing inside my head because it was deep enough in the season that whatever, it's just like, it is what it is. He could care less about me. I made a mistake today. Crap. I hope I play the game tomorrow in Montreal or 2 days away from now in Montreal, whatever. But it became background noise. And I had to just put up something that was my block. I'm not listening to him. He's not giving me anything of value. I need to do what I need to do to be the best player I can be.
No, you block them out and you think, you
Totally.
know what? I'm committed. So I'm committing
Yeah.
to the end of the season. And then you start thinking about other options, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
it's funny because those coaches, you're right. Some players absolutely love them. This is a famous true story, and I remember telling this. I went back to school later in life to take a couple courses just for fun, and I started talking to a girl in the classroom that I knew from soccer. And I said, "Oh, did you play for?" And then I mentioned a famous coach's name, okay, infamous
Yeah.
coach's name. And she says, "Yeah, I quit coaching because of him." There's about
Quit,
300
quit
students,
playing,
and
quit
he
playing because of him or
yeah,
quit
just quit
coaching.
playing. Yeah, not quit the team, quit playing soccer.
Wow.
So it's a big class. It's kind of a break, and people are
Yeah.
overhearing this conversation. About four desks away, a girl says, "I quit coaching because of him too," and a third one did it as well. And I knew all three. Eventually, I ended up knowing three just because I needed proof of this story. It was such a good
Yes.
story.
Yeah.
But that friend that I said that went to the States that had a great, like, played every game, got beat like a rented mule.
Yeah.
She said to this day, he's the only coach that she will play for.
Wow. Isn't that
So
crazy?
you never
Yeah.
know. And I mean,
Totally.
she had a rough life.
Yeah.
So, and some of the other kids that were at the club came from like the rich area and they were a little soft.
Yeah.
So who knows? There's a coach for everyone, right?
Totally. Well, when I was coaching at Trinity Western, we ended up being the best, what I will say, because I'm me, we were the best university soccer program in the country for 6 years running.
No,
And
that's
so
factual. That's not
so
bragging.
we were often looking at the same players as UBC and SFU, the big rivals out here. And with UBC, there were certain kids I would meet them and talk with them and whatever and go, no, they're not the kind of kid I want in my program. And I would let them go to UBC. And then there were other ones where it's like, no, I want this kid in my program. If from an outsider looking at it in terms of talent level, they'd go, those two kids are equal, but this is the kind of kid I want in my program. I think he will thrive here. This kid, no, I don't connect with him. We're wired differently. It's not going to work. And so I totally agree with you. There are some coaches that kids shouldn't play for. There are some coaches that kids should play for because it is the right place for them.
Yeah, absolutely. When you we were talking about the dark side, and I was looking up dropout statistics,
Yeah.
which are pretty high for a lot of kids actually in competitive sports. They just don't like it after a while. So I looked at the top five reasons. So the first one was lost interest, which could mean anything.
Yeah.
But the second reason, lack of fun. People, I think coaches don't realize that too many times we turn it into a job.
Oh, totally.
And the pressure, it's like, and the parents are in on it. Unfortunately, the parents are like, yep, coach says you got to do 3 practices this week. And again, now we're not just beating them to death at the college level, but now we're doing it at the high school level, and some kids at grade 8, grade 7, grade 6.
Yeah. So here's the thing that is crazy to me, Dean. Um, I've been in this gig a long time, and I think, and I'll speak on behalf of my players, I created an environment where guys looked for or girls looked forward to coming to training. And they looked forward to coming to training because of a couple of reasons. First of all, I catch people being good. I created an environment and culture where people are going to get a ton of positive reinforcement. We're going to work like crazy, but it's going to be positive overall. It's going to be demanding, but it's going to be very, very positive. And I also designed my training sessions where fun is an emphasis. Now, and again, it's not, lick your finger poking in someone's
Yeah.
ear kind of fun, not that kind of fun. But if you love playing competitive soccer, kids loved coming to my training sessions. I did a training session on what day is it today? It's Thursday. I went and was a guest for this academy and went and did a training session. Know that the kids, I know the coaches because I know the coaches that are normally there. And so I'm in as a guest coach. At the end of the session, I get a handful of girls come over and they go, "Wow, that went fast. Did we use the whole time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that was normal time or whatever." They go, "That went so fast." And they said, "Are you going to come back again?" And the reason was is it, and again, it's a type of training session that I would have loved as a player, but and it's also the type of session where I can't wait to get back next time. And it is the type of session where it goes fast. There are some coaches that do training sessions because they want to be Pep Guardiola or whatever
Yeah.
else. It's like, yeah, you see a
At the
little
high
taste
school
of
level.
that. Yeah, but are you kidding me? And this is one of the things where I already was along this line, but one of my favorite bosses of all time, you might know him, Bart Chauffeur. Um, Bart and his Dutch and his style of play or whatever else, there was so much about his training sessions. And again, he has like a billion different ones. I'm a little bit different than that. I go, no, I have this little repertoire that I like because it's the most enjoyable to teach the different principles of play, and kids will love coming back to this. And so I loved what Bart has in terms of his style and his tempo and what training sessions can be like because kids and players want to come back to that. And it is a shame if players stop playing because there's no fun. And by the way, no fun is the style of training that you have, but it's also a mindset. If you are there and you are focused 100% on winning, outcome, winning, that is going to be a stress-filled, anxious-filled environment. Michael Gervais, who used to work with the Seattle Seahawks, high performance mental skills coach or whatever, his whole concept is mastery. We are here to improve and get better as individuals and as a team. We are going to find ways to win together, and we're going to strive to continue to get better. When you are in an environment where the style of training session is one where it's energetic, it's fun, it's competitive, and you can't wait to come back. And it's not focused on outcome, results, standings. It's focused on we're here to get better. These are the things we're going to get better at, and we are here ultimately to win together. And my teams, when I do that, boy, we are going to find ways to win together. We're going to find ways to bring the very best out of each other. And winning, by the way, doesn't mean the standings, the outcome, or whatever else, although that's a side benefit to that. It is about creating an environment where individually we find our potential, and corporately we find a way to become more than the sum of the parts. That is what winning is. And when that happens, then kids don't quit because of lack of fun. There is retention when that happens.
Winning is
Because
fun.
totally.
Getting better is fun. Kids see themselves improving
Yeah.
and it's fun. It's like, did you see what I did? Did you see I
Yeah.
took that guy on? Right. But these sessions where they're not learning anything, they just go home thinking that they just did homework,
Yes.
right? That it was a job. And
Totally.
the sessions that people like, that kids like, it's not rocket science. There's a few things you just got to remember. First of all, no standing around.
Yeah.
Stop having them standing there waiting to take a shot on net for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Work out the drill. So every fourth or fifth shot, they're moving and they're doing something. The
Yeah.
other one is too much talking.
Yeah.
Coaches talk too much. And at
Yeah.
the young age, you get in, you make the adjustment and you get out, right? But do you find that you're still seeing a lot of these coaches that it's like, okay, I have to show that I'm the smart coach, and they
Oh,
spend 20 minutes working on 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds working on set plays. The hell
set
is
set
that? They
plays,
should be fired.
set plays and systems of
It's
play.
systems of play.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh my gosh,
And they
stop
can't pass a
trying to
ball, Alan. They literally
totally,
cannot pass a ball, but they know
totally.
set pieces.
Yes. Set pieces are very important, by the
Set
way.
pieces are very important.
If you want to win, they are very important. But even with set pieces, like when I did set pieces, I had something called the set piece game. It was a way of working on set pieces that was actually fun and enjoyable. And again, that there are you nailed it when you said that. There are way too many coaches who want to talk way too much at levels where it's just like, nah, I don't think so. And believe you me, I love to talk. As a matter of fact, right now I get
I know
paid
that.
to talk. That's my job. I love to talk, but and you know this, when you came to my training sessions, how often was I talking?
Yeah,
I
it's once you picked and choose when to do it, and it had to be meaningful. It wasn't just
totally,
for the sake of stopping it.
totally, and tons of talking over the top.
Or sometimes, and a good coach will do this, you recognize, all right, they've been going at a fast pace for 5 or 6 minutes. So I'm going to talk
Totally.
just to give them to catch their breath. These are little things that you gain with experience, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to talk about this particular point because I want them to feel this level of exertion because we're raising to this level. Yeah, totally.
Do you uh, probably more on the girls' side, obviously, than the boys' side? Did you see a lot of stuff like girls getting eating disorders and stuff like that that came along with it because they're trying to stay at a certain weight, or the coach is putting pressure, or they're sometimes it's you get them for a couple hours. The parent gets them in the ride home when they're just sometimes lambasting them, and you have no control over that. You don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. Uh, as a male coach, I did not get to be in a lot of those conversations,
No, not the conversations,
but
but I mean, as
yeah.
the coach, you noticed it. Like you
Absolutely.
noticed it, right?
Well, as you know, there's from a university perspective, there are so many things that are different. All of a sudden, they go from living at home to living somewhere else, different eating patterns, easy eating patterns versus more thoughtful groceries, money, and whatever else, or cafeteria food. Or there's so many different things that change appetite levels when you're traveling a lot. So there's a lot of things in there. So what
and
we did.
and body image. I mean,
Oh,
there's that,
totally.
which is huge. It's not insignificant.
Totally. And the difference between girls when they're first year of university versus fifth year of university, if they don't do things the right way, are very, there's some significant issues that can happen there. And so always got to be careful with that, but education was a huge part of it. And so we always, on the girls' side, we made sure that we had nutritionists come in, talk about these are healthy fuels, these are unhealthy fuels, and you've got to be looking at this from a perspective of your health at the end of it. And these are things that you need to do on a regular basis. So as much education as possible. And then if we suspected or whatever else, we would talk to the certain people inside the department, say, hey, can you pull this girl aside, give her, talk to her a little bit. And then people need to want to have help as well.
Yeah, and then if the parents don't know what's going on now, there's that. So you have to deal with them. I mean, it's tricky. We had a situation with one, and I wasn't about to dip into that pool. I mean,
Yeah,
that's tricky, like you said, right?
yeah,
So I just kind of managed to, okay, what would Pep Guardiola or Mourinho do?
yeah.
So
And there's,
yeah.
I consider myself a high performance mental skill coach, but I also know that there are certain things where this needs to go to a professional who is trained in this particular area. And eating disorders can be very deep rooted and difficult issues to deal with.
Yeah,
Unless,
yeah,
unless,
you don't want to start something if you're
yeah,
not an expert in that area, you could quickly devolve into a horrible conversation.
yeah. Unless you can bring Tony Robbins in because he
Unless you
can
can
fix them
take,
in one conversation,
that's
but
it. That's
most
all you
normal
need. Just
people
believe
takes
in
a little bit
yourself.
longer. Yeah.
Um, you, I have to say, I did it. I coached for 10 years and got out of it. And just from the year one to year 10 looked so different to me. Year one looked like, more of a grassroots thing where everybody just kind of, it was more community based and people just wanted to kind of have fun. And if somebody pursued something further, then great. By year 10, it was as if we were in an industry of um of like a factory that just churned out players to go and play at the collegiate level. And from year 1 to year 10, some say evolve, I would say it devolved into that. The whole industry of getting players into universities and where it's got now, is it out of hand? Like, does it any of it leave a sour taste in your mouth, or are you okay with all of it? Because you're not really into it anymore, right?
Well, I would say I'm beside it. I'm
Right.
beside it now
Adjacent.
because I'm not actively in it, other than I deal with players who are consuming that world. Yeah, it's ridiculous and out of control because you've got all these added things where people want to make a living from the game. And so when you're trying to make your living from the game, you need things to fall in your particular thing. So if you have an academy, you need players to come to your academy. How do you get them to academy? You convince the parents that this is the right route that's going to get them to college, and you start selling something that you don't have control over. And you've got all these misconceptions. You've got people who are completely in it for themselves. And so you've got that wide spectrum. And in that mix, it is a difficult, complex place. And boy, it would be good if there were more better people involved who could be truth tellers and who could be the sounding board to keep people where they should be, keep them within healthy areas. I don't even know where to go with all that because Dean, as you know, it has become an industry,
Yeah.
and there are so many misconceptions and unrealistic expectations of what that whole thing is going to deliver. And as you described, it also takes a ton of the fun out of it because there's so much scrutiny put on people who aren't good enough to be able to handle that scrutiny. Yeah, so it is a complex and difficult world.
Yeah, near the end I was describing it all as a cesspool, and it just seemed like and not only that, but you know that it's not a conversation for now because it deserves longer it deserves more time, but the sexual exploitation that goes on in all youth sports,
Yeah,
in college sports, and in
yeah,
professional sports, coaches exploiting players, it's at every level.
yeah,
Um, and what you see is a lot of parents that basically sometimes they're, you know what, if my kid's doing well, maybe I'll just kind of turn a blind eye. The parent didn't get a chance to play hockey in the NHL, right?
yeah,
But you know what? They're going to make sure their kid does. And this is
yeah,
another thing that I saw over that 10 years. At the beginning, you would come to two training sessions and you would have a game, two training sessions and a game. Then all of a sudden, for everything that you've been talking about, this pressure, this system to get
yeah,
into collegiate sports, all of a sudden, every parent, their kid has to go to an additional soccer practice with a coach that's not even with the club.
yeah,
And they're paying extra money. Why? So they can level jump their teammates. And this is something that was going on in hockey for decades. It's not
yeah,
enough to be on your team. You got to get a power skating coach and you need a slapstick coach, right? Slap shot coach. So
yeah.
my kid can get better and better and better. This started popping up over the 10 years that I was coaching. And I found that to be disgusting as well. So this whole industry is really just there to exploit children, it seems like. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to end on a positive note and tell me why I'm wrong.
Uh, because there are still good people in that world. And Dean, candidly, there needs to be more good people in those worlds. And if I could say it this way, the leadership of it is critical. If you have a leader who is in the right place, demanding the right things, holding people accountable for the right things, then you have a chance. If you have a leader who is self-serving, the whole industry goes that particular direction. And so, unfortunately, there are pockets of greatness inside that world. And there are awful lot of bottom dwellers inside that world. And unfortunately, the bottom dwellers, there's way too many of them, and they cause a lot of carnage, and they've made the whole thing. So now if you get a person who's doing what's actually in the best interest of the kids that he's coaching, there's a pretty good chance that his kids are going to get cherry picked and brought somewhere else to somebody selling something that isn't true or isn't accurate. But I would say to that coach, stay the course. Like if that person and that parent, takes that kid away, too bad. They're going to take them to an environment that's probably going to be counterproductive and ultimately end up with carnage. But in the world that you are involved in, you can make that part a good place to be. And the more people doing that, the better chance there is. And it's the same no matter what you do. As soon as you get into high performance, there are going to be people who are exploiters, and there are going to be people that come to serve and make the place better. And the world needs more people who are there to help people learn and grow and become more of who they were meant to be, and less people who are there to suck the life out of it for their own selfish means. And again, in there you've got everything from one side to the other, and you've got clubs from one side to the other, and people need to become educated and curious enough to ask the right questions of the right people. And I will say, when I came into London and came into working with the London Youth Whitecaps there, at the beginning, I knew nobody. And so I didn't know who to trust. And I don't know if you know this, but I asked a whole bunch of questions of a whole bunch of people. And then it took about 2 or 3 months after asking these questions. Then I started to know what the answers to those questions were. And I had my portrayal of who the good were, who the bad were, and who the ugly were. But it took me asking all the questions at the beginning, because there's an awful lot of the bad and ugly that can seem really good on the outside. And until you start to see the consistent work that they do, or their body of evidence, you can't find out. And so that's the nice thing about being in an environment where if you have any level of curiosity, you're going to find out pretty quick who the good people are. The people who are ultimately there to serve and care and make a better environment for people. They're going to be truth tellers and those type of things. The bad news is they often get overshadowed by all the other stuff that is there.
Yeah, the fit is the most important thing. You got to find a fit for your kid, right? So you have to know how your kid likes to be coached, the style of coaching,
Yeah,
the competitive cauldron, if it's that, or if it's something
yeah,
that's a little bit more laid back, and you find the best fit for your kid, right? Um,
absolutely.
well, on that
Just
note,
a, just a side
yeah, go
note
ahead.
before you close this up here. One of the guys that I played pro soccer with in Calgary, his name is Gregor Young, and Gregor Young is a, I don't know, TD head coach, something like that, of Vancouver youth soccer. He has a newsletter that comes out, and so I'm kind of telling that if people are interested in the soccer world, because Gregor played for the national team program, he played at UBC, he played professionally Calgary and whatever else. And he's been a head coach, technical director of a club for years and years and years and years. And he's one of the people, and we don't see eye to eye on everything, but I respect him and respect his opinions, because he has a really good view of what the good, bad, and the ugly is of the entire spectrum of the soccer world. And so Gregor Young is his name. If you Google it, you'll find out what his newsletter is or whatever else. And he talks about that stuff regularly, because he's been in the club where gets kids poached by academies and whatever else, and then they come back later because it's like, oh yeah, they were selling snake oil over there and whatever. And so he has a real healthy perspective. And even though on some things I don't necessarily agree with him, I at least understand, appreciate why he has those opinions. And it's like, okay, that's why the world is the way it is, because people are going to have different opinions on things. But he's very wise, and he has a real good outlook on that. And I have one other topic area that I wanted to talk about just
Sure.
before we wrapped up here. In sport, the whole concept of high performance versus recreation, whatever, that
Yeah.
whole spectrum. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my coaching career was when I basically got fired from coaching the best university team in the country. So we 6 years in a row finished our ranked top three in Canada. We were playing Vancouver Whitecaps first team once or twice every spring. We played Sunderland from the English Premier League, Cardiff City. We played the national youth team 5 times. A bunch of my players moved on to higher levels, blah, 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 all those kind of things. Suddenly, I was without a job. I had one little stop at UFE coaching women's soccer, where, by the way, we won Canada West, the only Canada West banner they have. And then I got a job coaching at the University of Northern British Columbia. So I literally went from the best program in the country to the very, very, very bottom, worst team in the country. So we're playing, and so we start out the season. We're playing in front of 3,500 fans at the University of Victoria. I'm a graduate of Trinity and University of Victoria. I played at UVic. When I played there, we were number two ranked in the country or whatever else. Anyways, so the coach at UVic, I knew him because I played for him, love him. Bruce Wilson, awesome. So I say to my boss on our way down, I said to him, I said, just so you know, I've been in this business a long time. There is a very good chance we are going to lose by about 15 goals. And this is soccer, like that shouldn't
Yeah, I
happen.
know. Yeah.
But literally, I got hired in June, arrived in Prince George in July, and we're on September whatever playing our very first game. I had no time to recruit. And Prince George, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Prince George, it is northern British
Northern
Columbia. It is skidooing, skiing, hunting,
Moose.
moose. Yeah, we had when I lived there, I had moose and bear that lived in my
Yeah.
backyard, and fox and lynx and cougars. It was wild. It was crazy, but it's not the environment to develop soccer players. It's in the north. And people have lots of different things they do. They don't, and if you, yeah, it's a long ways away. Anyways, so I'm coaching this team. I think we're probably going to lose about 15-0. Good news. The game starts, we get backed up so far. It's not that we can't get out of our half, Dean. We can't get out of our 18-yard box. And so it is so pegged in that they can't score because it kept hitting bodies. There was no way for it to go get in the back of the net. So we're down 2-0, but whatever. For the number of chances, it could have been a dozen or whatever else. Anyways, in the 40th minute, I told my striker, Danny Dell, to just go stand in the center circle. He's like, Coach, I haven't seen the ball. I'm like, just stay there, just stay there. Well, their goalkeeper, he's creeping up. He's standing with Danny talking to him because he has nothing to do. And so all of a sudden, one of their players takes a shot. It goes off of my striker who's defending on the penalty spot because he whatever. It goes off his shin and bounces out to Danny Dell, who's up in the center circle. Danny Dell now has a breakaway with a backpedaling goalkeeper from about 70 yards. That's a long breakaway. And so he starts running with the ball. 20 other guys are following behind. 3,500 fans are on their feet going, are you kidding me? UNBC is going to get a shot on goal. Anyways, all of a sudden, Dan Dell starts to wind up to shoot. And we're like, what's he doing? He's 40 yards from the goal still and whatever else. But it also caught the goalkeeper unexpected as well. Like, why would you shoot on it? You're a 1v1 with the goalkeeper. Anyways, he shot from 40 yards and the goalkeeper wasn't ready for it. And it goes just inside the post and we scored. We're down 2-1 at half. Anyways, they ended up out shooting us 54-3. And we only lost 3-1. It was just crazy. The next day we lost 8-0, but that's besides the point. Anyways, so we are 0-2, 0-4, 0-6, 0-8, 0-10, 0-12. We are going to our last two games of the Canada West season. We're flying to Calgary to play against Mount Royal, and then we're flying to Winnipeg to play, can't remember if it was Manitoba or Winnipeg. So we go to Calgary and God is good to us. It snows that morning, so they got to shovel off the field. It's just a mess. And so I tell my players, I said, you're not going to like me for this, but literally every time you get it, kick it forward. And I'm using the word kick because it's snowy, it's slippery. Kick it to our striker, play off our striker. No short passing today because it'll be bad. Mount Royal couldn't grasp that. They needed to play short passes. So they play short passes, slip, we get it, we knock it up to our striker, we get a scoring chance. They play short passes, slip, we get anyways, we end up winning that game 3-1 against Mount Royal. Our first win and only win of that particular season. We go into the change room afterwards, and my teams at university, we always sang a song after we won a game. And so the guys were so excited because they didn't think they'd get to sing that year, but I had it up, printed out for them, and it's Lean on Me. And so the guys
Oh my God,
singing
what a cliche.
totally, but they loved it. And Dean, they sang so loud, and it was one of my favorite wins of all time. The next day, our game had been delayed. We arrive at Winnipeg at 2:45 in the morning. We have to play them at 9 a.m. because they didn't have their own soccer fields. We had to play at 9 a.m. So my guys get like 4 hours sleep. We play the next day against Winnipeg. We're losing 3-0. In the 90th minute, my goalie makes a save. Ty throws it out to Connor. Connor passes it to Tyson. Tyson passes it to Brett. Brett crosses it in, and Danny Dell scores a goal. He was my only senior because he had played college ball, whatever. Every other player on the team was a freshman. And so Danny Dell was kind of their hero. He was awesome, just an awesome kid. He scores in the last minute of his last university soccer game. We lose 3-1. We celebrate like we've just won the World Cup because, and what I was most proud of was it was the 90th minute of a game against a rested team when we had just got in the middle of the night, and my guys played their hearts out, and they did every single game in that 1-13 season. But Dean, the thing that I learned the most was I had been at the pinnacle of university soccer or whatever, and coached the best of the best, and won lots of trophies, banners, medals, and whatever else. That UNBC season, and actually the 2 years after that, are some of my favorite seasons ever. And there was not a ton of winning, other than in my third year there, we beat Trinity Western both times we played them, which was awesome. Whatever.
Beautiful.
But
Revenge.
but but the reason that I mention all this is winning and losing is something, but in sport, going after it and finding a way together to solve the problems that you have. I love that just as much as I did winning the trophies, because when you got a great group of people to go to battle with, to learn and grow and figure out how to survive together, you can be at the worst university team in the country or the best university team in the country, and you can still build meaningful relationships and build amazing memories that can last a lifetime. And it's about mindset and literally trying to keep getting better and to be an amazing teammate and find ways, again, to use the term that I always use, find a way to win together. And it was absolutely amazing. And if there were more coaches and more players that understood that particular concept, that you can be at the best team or the worst team and still have amazing memories, amazing, meaningful relationships, regardless of those, go into it with the purity of loving the people that you get to be involved with, and helping them become the best they can be, then the sporting world would be a much better place for youth sport, for collegiate sport, and whatever else. And there needs to be more people in the world that do stuff like that.
I agree 100%. And I think that's a nice way to end it. So I'm going to say goodbye to you, and I'm going to press pause, and then I will say goodbye to you off camera. But
Thank you so much, Dean. Sure appreciate it.
thank you very much for coming. The students will appreciate it. And remember, everybody, don't trust anyone over the age of 30.